we're thrilled to have you, Dr. Cooper. Appreciate you coming on the show and spending some time with us today.
Awesome, man. I'm excited to be here, and I've just to get the chance to visit with you and your audience.
It's such a good topic. And certainly right now, uncertainty is prevalent, right? And people are feeling the pressure and the weight in a lot of different ways. Before we get too much into that, tell us just a kind of a high level view of what your company is, how you got to it, just real briefly, and then what you generally do in your business.
Yeah, my company, what I do, I tell people I like to help people establish habits and systems to just help them thrive in their lives. And so I get a chance to do that in a few different capacities. Number one has been keynote speaker. I travel around the United States and sometimes out of the United States to do talks, and that's been good to me. But this has obviously turned that a little bit upside down, which has brought me kind of in the other areas. I also write books, and I tell people that's kind of the foundation of everything that I do, because that's where I really dig in and start to flush things out and take my experience and put it into a format where I can pass it on to others. And then I also do coaching. So coaching and mastermind groups. I love those. I mean, sounds like you guys do a lot of the same things. And it's just an awesome experience to be able to dig in with people and help them pull out their gifts and live the life they want to be living. And so in terms of how I got here, though, I tell people I've always had an itch for teaching. Like I've always felt like I wanted to teach in some capacity. And I got my undergrad education in education. And I thought I would go out and teach at the high school level, but I did my student teaching and I thought, I like it, but it's not exactly where I want to be. And so I kept going to school and became a college professor. And I love that, working with college students and helping them go out into their careers and excel. But what brought me here was a two-part piece, and we'll probably talk about this, but I had an urge to teach different topics, on goals and values and habits. And it didn't quite fit probably for the university setting in terms of needing to teach certain topics. So I had that urge, but then I also had a situation that turned my life upside down. And I tell people kind of pushed me forward into a situation where I really had to dig and probably gave me the boldness to go out and pursue a goal and dream of doing what I do right now. So that's kind of in a nutshell about that.
Love that. So many reasons why I invited Coyte on the show, because he speaks my language, right? All about systems, all about habits, really focus. I mean, the values, like there's just more important things than how much money you make or how big your business is. It really is these kind of core things that his focus, I mean, it's clear that that's his focus. Let's go back to that. And you touched on it. So we're talking about uncertainty and how do we thrive in it? And before we get too deep into it, I want you to define, how would you define thriving? So we've got uncertainty. What would be your definition of thriving?
Yeah, to me, thriving is gaining the ability to, first off, I think you need to understand the areas of life that are most important to you. You need to know your priority areas. You need to know family's most important, business. You need to know vitality. You need to be able to prioritize those things, because it's really the only way, with so many things pulling on us right now. We need to know those areas where we want to thrive. Otherwise, to me, there's no point in starting. But once you know those areas and you start to think about the life you want to be living, to me, thriving is getting those pieces in place to where you can start bringing the best that you have to offer every single day. As a parent, getting the right habits in place in terms of, for me, it's a growth ritual in the morning, and it's getting focused on my vision, and it's knowing my values. So when I get into my day, I'm not responding frustrated and upset. I'm showing up and giving my kids the best version of me that I can. And to me, it's the same in work and vitality. It's creating those habits to where you can really start showing up. And I know you know this, but man, when you start really showing up, it's your life becomes vibrant. And so thriving to me is just taking the gifts that you have and bringing the best that you have to offer every single day.
Yeah, I love the you touched on the priorities, and I am a firm believer in like getting the priorities right. My background is I moved from DC, moved my entire family down here, left a consulting firm because I just couldn't do that life, right? And I chuckle a little bit, because how many times do we go into a meeting at work and we say, hey, sorry, I'm late. We just had a really crazy breakfast and our family was laughing and joking, and sorry, I'm a little late for the meeting.
Yeah.
Instead, it's the other way. We come home late for dinner and we say, hey, I'm really
Yeah.
sorry. We were working on this
Yep.
project and it doesn't happen the other way when it really should. That should be the priority, our families and the
Yeah.
people close to us.
I love
So
I love that you said that too, because I think a lot of people out there, a part of thriving too is living life on your own terms. You
yeah,
know, living life the way you want to be living. Part of what I love about what I do is I get to choose. You know, I have to work hard enough to get my family and take care of them, but after this interview, if I really thought it was important to go on a hike with my family and that's what thriving was for me, I'll do that. And so I think it's at least at some point taking some control of your life, because you can't feel like you're thriving if you're always living on somebody else's schedule, doing the things that you don't necessarily want to be doing.
love that. So thriving isn't necessarily a certain amount of money in your bank account, a super nice car, but it's really making the choices for yourself in your life. And it was that how anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, no, and it's absolutely that. And by all, I don't want people to think like, oh no, we don't have to thrive in the area of finances. You can do that as well. I mean,
Sure.
you can deliver. To me, thriving is just adding crazy value and helping people break through, but also having that to where I'm able to support my family and take vacations and do those things that are making adventures we're passionate about. So I don't want people out there to think, oh, that means make none. You certainly can do that, but like you, those aren't the things that drive me. What drives me is showing up and, like I said, being the best that I can be in those areas.
Love that. So you were
Yeah.
thrown a little bit of a curveball
Hmm.
several years ago. And certainly, I think this pandemic, I mean, it's been interesting to watch it unravel because everybody's kind of like, at first it was like, oh, there's this thing, let's not shake hands. And
Yeah.
then it was like, oh, wait, there's this bigger thing. Maybe we're going to stay, away from big crowds. And now pretty much everybody's on lockdown
Yes.
and people are losing jobs. I think I saw the unemployment rate at 20%. And
Yeah.
it's been a total curveball. And you were thrown a little bit of a curveball
Yeah.
towards the end of your time over at North Carolina. So give us some, and maybe that was your first introduction to how do you deal with uncertainty. If it wasn't, certainly share more. But would love to hear your perspective on that as you were thrown an unexpected curveball.
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely hands down the biggest uncertainty I've been thrown. And I went to North Carolina. I was a college professor. And at the age of 28, man, I landed what I considered my dream job. I'd always thought about North Carolina and it came in front of me. And I went on an interview and I walked around and I'm like, man, this place is awesome. Like, I'd love to be here. And they offered me the job. And I went on campus and I got a chance to meet with my chair at the time, this guy named Kevin Guskowitz. And Kevin Guskowitz has done so well. He's now the chancellor of the university.
Wow.
That's who hired me, and that's who I had my meetings with. And I sat down with Kevin, and very early on, he said, Coyte, we're going to ask you to do some things that we've never asked anybody to do. And he said, we're going to ask you to publish 3 or 4 articles a year, which is a lot. We're going to ask you to teach because we value that. We're going to ask you to get grant funding. He basically laid out all the standards. And then I got to work. I tried to do everything in my power to over deliver. I mean, I started to publish 7 to 8 articles a year. I poured into my teaching. I got grant funding. I just did everything I could to add value. And year 1 came around and I met with Kevin and he just said, keep doing what you're doing. You know, we couldn't ask you to do anything else. You've overexceeded what we thought. Just keep doing that. Year 2 came around, same thing. Year 3 comes around and that's where they get more serious. Everybody in your department who ranks above you basically evaluates your materials to that point and decides, should we keep moving them forward? Because what happens in a tenure line position, you have 6 years to prove yourself. And in year 6, you're going to put all your materials up and they're going to decide whether or not it's good enough. If it's good enough, you got promoted, you celebrate, there's stability, there's a lot of good things. And that was my goal. That was my goal. Okay. So on the flip side though, if you don't, you lose your job, right? So
Wow.
you have to go figure it out. So so in that 3rd year, they voted unanimously, let's keep moving forward. And years 4 and 5, I had a different chair, but same feedback. And so I'm feeling good about this situation. I've over delivered what they asked me to do. The only feedback I've ever gotten has been good. But what you do is you take all your articles, your books, your teaching philosophy, research philosophy, just a bunch of this stuff, and you put it into a file. And it was this huge pile of papers. And you take it and you push it out. and it's no longer your thing anymore. And it's going to go to a lot of people who are going to judge and evaluate you and determine whether or not you're good enough. So it went out in October. And I tell people it's a long process. It goes all the way into April, and you're supposed to hear in April. And so I'd gotten some good feedback, some initial, like your department was supportive, your chair, your dean, your college, they were all supportive. So it sounded really good. But in April, I didn't hear anything. And so I started to get a little bit nervous, but I thought, academia is a little bit slow, so maybe we're okay. But it came all the way to graduation in May. And at that point, I'm kind of going, dang, that's a long time after when I was supposed to find out. Well, the Monday after graduation, my chair at the time wrote me and said, I'd like to meet with you. And I tell people, honestly, what I thought is like, man, this is that time. I'm going to get the good news and we're going to celebrate. As a family, we're going to go buck wild. And by buck wild, I tell people Chuck E. Cheese is what we're talking about. That's what we do. I know you understand. You have kids. So we're going to go do something fun like that. And so anyways, it was a beautiful spring day. Went into Chapel Hill, went to my boss's office, knocked on the door, and he's sitting at his desk and he stands up and he's walking over. He's got an envelope in his hand and he says, I've got something I want to talk to you about. I said, okay, cool. And he said, do you want to sit? And so we had a conference table in front of us and we sat down and he immediately said, Coyte, I just want to thank you for everything you've done. Again, you've been a valuable citizen. You've done what we've asked you to do. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. And I'm kind of this energetic, enthusiastic guy. So I cut in, I'm like, man, thank you so much. Like, it's been amazing here. Everybody's been so good to me. I'm so grateful. And then I looked at him and I noticed there was something different in his eyes. And I tell him, everybody's been around somebody where all of a sudden they can tell they're about to hear something they don't want to hear. And he looked at me and he pushed the envelope forward and he said, Coyte, I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you've been denied tenure. And in an instant, boom, my world got turned upside down. And I tell people, when something big happens that's kind of life altering, your mind doesn't even react first. Your body does. I felt like my stomach had dropped out from under me. I felt like my throat was closing off. My face was flush. And then my thoughts finally caught up. And the first thought that I had was, what does this mean for my family? Like, how am I going to support them? We just bought a house. We had 2 kids. We planned on being here. And it's like, it's one of those situations, like, you lose a job there, you got to go somewhere else. Like, and so that was my first thought. My second thought was, I'll never forget this, was like, am I damaged goods now? Am I going to have a hard time getting another job because I didn't get tenure here and people are going to ask about it? And I had a series of different thoughts and they wanted to talk about a different job opportunity, but I just wanted to leave. And he was so kind, but I just wanted to go. And I had one more thing I had to do that day. And I told people, I always imagined on this day that we'd get the good news and I'd be calling my wife, Brandy, and saying, dude, like, we did it. We're good. We're moving forward. But now I'm here going, how am I going to tell her in a way that doesn't rock her world? I don't want her to feel the way I feel, which is, you got some of this fear, this anxiety coming in. And finally I thought, there's just no way. I'm about to tell her that we lost our way.
You're dropping a bomb.
Yeah, I'm dropping a bomb. And so, but then I don't drop the bomb strategically. I do it very poorly because I call her up and I dial it on here and she answers and I say, I didn't get it. And I joke with people, I'm like, she's probably thinking I didn't get my sandwich. Like, what are we talking about? And I also tell people, I say, this is the one time in my life I wish I wasn't a joker. Like, I play jokes on my wife and my kids. And I'm thinking right now, I'm like, gosh, I wish I didn't play jokes because she totally doesn't believe me. And I said, sweetie, I'm dead serious. And my wife is one of the sweetest Midwest girls you'll ever meet. But you push a Midwest girl wrong, and I'm telling you, they got some fight in them. My wife was mad. She's like, you've got to be kidding me after everything you've done. What does this mean? And I'm like, sweetie, I don't know, but I'm going to come home and we're going to figure it out. And that's where, man, my whole life was uncertain at that point. And I tell people I was facing so many different, first off, negative thoughts. I was all over the place. I started with confusion. I was so confused. Like, how does this happen? And then I was frustrated and angry because it's like, what the heck? This is messed up. And then I settled upon an emotion because of what had happened. I didn't even know what it was, but I was listening to a talk by Brene Brown, and she talked about the feeling of shame, the feeling that you get when you've been disconnected, cut off, rejected, and you feel like you're not enough. And that's the way I felt, man. It was a time where everything, I didn't know what to do. And the craziest thing was, though, and this is where we transition probably to the point where we start talking about things, is in that time, they actually came back, and it would have been a demotion, but they were offering me another job where I'd have been teaching more, doing less research, which I actually preferred, and I'd be grad coordinator still. They pay me the same. But I went to my wife and I said, I just don't feel like I should take this. I don't think I'll be happy. Like, I don't feel like what happened is completely right for me. And I'm not happy with it. And she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, man. I've always wanted to go out and had this urge to be an author, coach, and speaker and inspire people. And my wife at the time, she's okay with me saying this. I tell people, I think she was like more allergic to risk. And so I expect her to be like, Coyte, no, no insurance, no clients, no talks. Like, no, like, we're not doing that. Take this other job. Let's play it safe. Yeah. But she looked at me and she said, go for it. And I'm like, what? Like, go, what do you mean go for it? Like, I thought we were going to have a negotiation.
Yeah.
And I thought I had time, but she said, go for it. And we literally went in, and I could have waited longer to tell them on this other job, but I went in and I said, no, I can't, I politely appreciate it, but I got to turn it down because I want to go out. I need to do this now. And, but with that, man, when you get fired from your job and you're not sure, and then you go out and you take on like a big old life altering, like, let's do this. There's a lot that comes with that. But I'll tell you the greatest gift that it's given me. It literally, because in the middle of it, I started to establish the right habits. It taught me to train my brain to get in the right place and get my thoughts, my emotions, everything in the right spot. And it's literally prepared me for this exact moment. For us, in terms of the business I've lost, I've not missed a beat. But more importantly, it's prepared me to teach other people, like, listen, you have more control than you think. You have more control over your thoughts, your emotions, but you got to take control of that power. And so that's where kind of this story morphs into this. You know, here we have uncertainty. People don't know what to do with it. And I think there's things you can do right now to get yourself in a spot to thrive. And so that's kind of just in a nutshell, the uncertainty piece.
So I mean, certainly I can only imagine you guys have, been on this 10-year track for 6 years. You guys are organizing your family around it. You're making moves, it is the focus. And then you don't get it, right? This shock and surprise, wait, this whole thing, our whole master plan now has just gone out the window.
Yeah.
It sounds like you turned a corner fairly quickly from that confusion and like what just happened, head spinning, into, okay, we're going all in on this other thing. So break that process down a little bit. And what did you learn during that process that maybe you were doing wrong before? Like what was the shift that happened in that time frame?
Yeah, and I would tell people, like, I didn't figure it out like in one single day. It wasn't a snap your fingers type of thing. But what happened is for weeks, there was probably a 2 to 3 week period where I had made a decision, like, I'm gonna do this. But you know what I kept doing every single day? I kept replaying in my mind that I'm no longer a professor at this university and that I got fired. And I'm telling you, when you replay the wrong things, what you're not, what you don't want, you're gonna get a loop of emotions that you don't like. I was frustrated, I was angry. And it wasn't until I did what I tell people, I gave my brain a better option, that I started to create change. And here's the cool part for audience members. It wasn't some like out of your reach type of thing. I was listening to Robin Sharma at the time, who I admire his work. He's got a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, who he basically talks about the importance of little habits. And one of the things he says is, man, if you'll just rise early and start reading the right books, it'll change your life. And I thought to myself, like, I don't have a better option right now. I'm struggling. So I'm going to get up every single day at 5 a.m. and I'm going to start reading books. And one of the first books I read was Man's Search for Meaning, which is a book about adversity and struggle. And I started to read books about goals. And I just started to flood my brain with a better option than waking up and looking around and saying bad.
Now, was that different than what you had done before? I mean, you're a PhD, right? So I can't believe that reading books and studying is not a part of your life generally. But was it the type of book? Like what shifted there?
Two things. Type of books, which I've read books like this. I've read John Maxwell, I've read Tony Robbins, I've read a bunch of these types of books, but it would be sporadically, right? And it would not be in the morning. So I'd be reading in the afternoon or the evening. The biggest shift that I made is I stopped picking this thing up in the morning, which will lead to, I'm telling you right now, if this is the first thing that you see in the morning and you're going to social media and you're scrolling it, you're going to find all kinds of things to make your brain fearful. If you might say, hey, Coyte, but I just checked my email. Well, like, listen, who actually feels good waking up in the morning and looking and seeing they got 40 emails to respond to? Nobody.
Or none.
Yeah. Or if you watch the news, people are like, I don't do those things. I watch the news. I'm like, listen, that's worse. Like the news just floods your brain with so much negative. The best thing I ever did was say, I'm not going to do this. And instead I'm going to wake up and the very first thing that's going to go into my brain is something that will be positive and productive. And what I realized is like, man, I started to point my brain to possible rather than taking and looking at my situation and seeing all the bad. I started to realize like there could be good from this. And then what happened after that is when you read a lot, which I think is one of the most powerful habits on the planet, when you're crazy consistent every single day, you start to come upon things like gratitude, and you come upon values, and you come upon goals. And I just started to systematize that. I mean, I tell people for 1950 days plus, I've done the things that I talk about every single morning. And I just started to do things like the gratitude piece. And I have some special things I do with that. But it just started to teach my brain that I don't have to do this. I don't have to be like everybody else that is sitting around and complaining and frustrated. And they have real things. I'm not saying that. But that was never going to serve me. To sit around in the middle of what's going on right now and sit in a spot where you're like, this stinks, I don't want it, it's tearing our life apart, that will never get you what you want. And so I just started to get up every single morning and just started to give my brain a better option. And it was crazy. It didn't come magically. It took weeks. But when you know habits, and so habits are anywhere from 21 to 66 days. But once I start to string together weeks, I started to notice my brain starting to find better. And when it started to find better, it started to free me up. So there's more to it, but that's just kind of in a nutshell.
Love that. I think, so talk about that shift. So you start reading books. I imagine we've got listeners who right now they're in that head spinning zone.
Yeah.
So they're listening and they're saying, that seems really great, but I've got to pay for my mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to feed my kids. So how did you maybe see the change, or how did it fit in with some of those like hygiene factors that had to be taken care of, right? You needed to find income. You needed to be self-reliant or self-sufficient in a way. So how did that shift, or how did you couple it together?
Yeah, I think the one thing I stumbled upon pretty early, and this won't be something your readers love hearing, but one thing that I stumbled upon early is Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy. A lot of these guys say, if you're willing to invest in yourself, in your mind, in your education, you'll get it 10 times down the road back. And so I've always believed in that philosophy, that if you're willing to invest in books, courses, coaches, the right ones, you're going to get back 10 times that amount. So I've always believed in that. And I could look around my room. I've probably bought 200 books in the last 2 years. And at a time where I was taking on a pretty big challenge, but it's always served me. So first off that, but if you're in a spot where you're like, man, I'm just not there yet, there's a lot of resources out there. I mean, there's no shortage of resources to point your brain to positive. I mean, I would say reading a book, an actual hard copy is best. But if you need to listen to audio podcasts like this, listen to podcasts every single morning. But just don't allow your brain to go over and to focus on the wrong things. Because when you think about it, like this COVID that's come on, right? There's a lot of stuff that comes with it. And naturally, one of our brain's mechanisms, that what it wants to do is keep us safe. It's one of its jobs. So when something like this happens, your brain goes, wait, what is that? Like, I need to know about that. And I found I study this, right? And still, I started to spend like way too much time on social media. Go, whoa, what's going on? Like, what is that? Like, how many people are dying? Well, I need to run the calculations on that. Like, I started to get caught up in that. And what happens when you do that, you say it seems harmless, but no, you're literally flooding your brain with fear. And when you flood your brain with fear, it's paralyzing. You feel like you can't do anything because you're going, oh my gosh, this is the worst. People dying everywhere. I'm in trouble. My business is in trouble. Rather than actually creating your space to say, no. Like, first off, what could be the gift in this situation? Like, what could be good here? And we can talk more about that, but there's also like, what do I actually want from my family? What do I actually want from my business? Like, creating the space to push that out, and instead point your brain going, hey, let's go over here. Rather than looking at crap, let's point it to positive and let's look for productive. And because to me, it's sometimes as simple as that. Like, a lot of times people are like, I feel overwhelmed. Well, let's take a step back and say, what are you focused on? Well, I'm focused on the economy's bad. People are dying all over the place. If you're always only focused on that, you're going to continue to get that. But if you'll actually create that space to create some better options, it can take a little bit of time, but your brain will start to respond to that. And for people who say, you don't understand, Coyte, about 6 weeks ago, I don't know the exact date, when this started to happen, I had 2 people in a span of 2 days cancel 2 $5,000 talks. That's $10,000. Within 2 weeks, $25,000 worth of business was gone. And that's how I support my family.
Yeah.
And so, but you know what though? Because I wake up and I train my brain to look for what's good and to find the solution, I didn't miss a beat. I mean, I literally started to go, what could be good here? I'm not thrilled that I lost $25,000, but like, what could be good? And I started to go, I can build out more of my coaching, my courses, the things I've known would be vital for my company. And I just started to focus all my attention there. Now, those things were still there. And at any point I could have stopped, but I thought that will never serve me to support my family, to support my clients, to impact lives. I've got to come over here and find a way to serve people, to develop more business. And it's been good. I'm starting to figure it out. But so I understand what people are going through, man.
I think it's, and I hope listeners are picking up what you're putting down, right? Because ultimately you're talking about, filling your mind with the positive, looking for the positive, but there's also, at least in the experience that you're sharing, there's also, that's coupled with action. It's coupled with going out and doing things. And so I think the dots that people should be connecting is that, yes, fill yourself with good things, but then make sure that then gets incorporated in some way. Maybe you just start out with writing down something you're grateful for. Maybe you just start out with those small things that are small actions, and then that can build and that can compound and become bigger. I know you've got a pretty solid kind of morning ritual. So, and maybe that's your answer to this question, but I'd love to know, where would you encourage people to start right now? So let's say I'm that negative guy. I'm not, reading books, but I just lost my job. I've applied for unemployment. I'm now just waiting for my first check. Where do I start? And then if you don't answer with your morning ritual, then roll right into your morning ritual.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, do you really want different right now? And some people are Coyte, of course I do. I've lost my job. I'm frustrated. Do you want to create change in your life is the first thing. Are you committed to creating change in your life? And if the answer is yes, and a lot of people are saying, Coyte, no kidding. But like a lot of people go, I kind of want better. No. Are you committed to creating change in your life? Will you step up and do what's necessary to elevate and to get to a better spot? You've got to make that decision up front. Once you do, there are things that you can do that will elevate your life. And where I would start right away is, if you're overwhelmed, I'm not going to give you a 10-page plan. I'm not going to give you 10 things to do. I just would say, if you will just wake up right now and say, for the next 21 to 30 to 28 or 30 days, get up, get a notebook, and just first off, just write down 3 things that you're grateful for every single day. Okay. Just keep it simple. Like, are you grateful for your family? And hopefully that's a yes. If not, you need to find a reason to be grateful for your family. But is it whatever it is, write those things down, and that will create a foundation. I call those things baseline blessings. And it sounds like probably some people are going, oh, that sounds really Pollyanna-ish. No, like, listen, if you want to free up in your life, then you must be able to look at your situation and say, I've got some really amazing things. I want more, but man, I'm grateful for this. Because listen, I've studied some of the most effective athletes on the planet. And the one thing that has struck me is these guys who have won multiple world and Olympic championships, just how grateful they are for the opportunity to compete, the opportunity to cut weight, if it's cut weight, the opportunity to prepare. They have this mindset of gratitude. And I believe that's what it takes to have abundance and achieve at a high level. So that your baseline blessings, they can literally be the same things every single day, or you can swap it up. I would say, if this is a lot for you, just 3 same things, but feel those things. Challenge yourself. Don't mail it in. You've got to say, man, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my health, whatever it is. You've got to feel that. Now, here was the biggest transformational turning point for me when I lost my job. Those provided the foundation. But then I started to realize this. I stumbled upon the idea of taking challenges and turning them into something special. And Viktor Frankl's story taught me that, losing your entire family in the Holocaust and going out and teaching people about the power of choice and inspiring 40 million people. I thought, if he can do that, I can do that here. I haven't lost my family. I have my kids, I have my wife, I have my skill sets. I live in America. I can do something here. So I started to get up every single morning with my biggest challenge, which was losing my job. And I said, what could I be grateful for? Eventually I shortened that, said, what's the gift? What's the gift in this situation? And at first my brain is like, nothing, dummy. You just got fired from a job. I'm not joking. It was like, nothing. Like, there's nothing good about this. You lost your job. You lost your dream job. Are you nuts? But I tell people I refused that answer because I knew it wouldn't serve me. Same way if I was going through right now, lost my job, I'm struggling, I would refuse to think there's not something good in the middle of it. Because if I settle right there, what have I got? I've got nothing, right? If I just settle and I give up, I've got nothing. But if I just wake up every morning and say, no, what could be the gift? Well, I've always wanted to do this side business. Or man, I could dive into just really improving my relationship with my wife and my kids. Find something that inspires you. And once you find it, lock in on it. It took me a couple of weeks. I started to go, this could be the opportunity to really go all in and do this. And I might've been too afraid to do it, but this is the chance. And eventually my brain was first like, I don't know. That seems kind of scary. I mean, considering I got fired from my job, that makes sense.
Sure.
But eventually I started to go, this is it. And now I believe it to my core. Here's the coolest thing, right? You may not be able to go, boom, one day change it. But if you ask for weeks, you'll train your brain to, in the most challenging situations, to look for opportunity. The reason why 6 weeks ago, when I found out I lost $25,000 worth of business, I pivoted immediately, is I taught my brain to think that way. I had created the new neural pathways. So when I did that, I moved and I went. It didn't solve everything immediately, but I started to dive in and create these things that I'm really excited about. So for everybody out there, if you don't want to be where you are, just start simple with that. And there's things you can do. There's meditation, reading, there's goals, values. There's a lot of pieces, but just gratitude. Keep it really simple to start off.
I love that. I love the, Viktor Frankl. A lot of people don't know at the time that he was put into Auschwitz or whatever concentration camp he was thrown in, he had a visa to go to America with his wife.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
He had the choice, like you're saying. He had the choice, and yet he saw the opportunity to take care of his parents who were older. And so he hung around and ended up in the concentration camps. And so, I mean, a lot of us are like, we would never choose to be unemployed. We would never choose to be going through these hardships. But you see from his example, the power that comes in choice, in choosing. How are we going to embrace something? How are we going to engage in something? And even though it's, in his scenario, people are dying all around him, being killed off in the most, vile ways possible.
It's crazy.
And we now are in every single day, we've got a similar option of choice. We can do something or we can not do something. We can look for opportunity. We can look at all the obstacles and all of the terrible things that are happening. So I totally love that. And I think right now, obviously the parallel is people need to choose, because what do you think is the risk in this type of scenario? Do you think that there's a risk of people losing themselves during this time, or like what would you say are primary risks during this time?
Yeah, I think what you just said, I think you can lose yourself. You can get completely overwhelmed where you feel stuck and you're not able to show up for your family. I think that's one of the biggest things. I think there's a risk of just piling it on too much, that you give up and you coast. And I see this with a lot of really cool people who get to a certain point in their life where they just stop trying. And when you get to that point where you just stop trying and you're going through the motions, like life is not exciting and vibrant in that spot. And I tell people, even in the middle of the hard, especially in the middle of hard, I think that's where you carve it out. Every single one of my worst, most challenging moments have led me to the biggest blessings. I'm not kidding. Like, and I'm fortunate, man. I haven't lost a kid and I haven't lost my wife. And I know some people have that. So I don't want to seem insensitive, right? But I think back, like I tell people, when I went college, I wanted to be a national champ. And I literally, for 5 years in wrestling, I poured my heart and soul into that. Blood, tear. I mean, I worked so hard and I didn't get it. And the weeks afterwards, I was like, I know I was depressed. I was depressed. I was bummed. I didn't understand the stuff that I understand now. But that led me to pursuing a path to get my PhD, doing the work I do now. I love it. I tell people when I was in college, this is a weird thing that I throw out there. And people sometimes are like, you really just told me that? I told you that. When I was in college, I was dating a girl and she decided to hook up with my best friend from high school. That wasn't fun. Like a lot of people are like, really, you're going to share that? I will, because there's a good ending to it. I moped around and finally my brother's like, Coyte, get up, like stand up, like do something. And finally I did get back up And 6 months later, I met my wife, Brandy, who's my soulmate. She's my partner. And then now losing my job at UNC. At the time, any one of these never would have chosen them. But because I stood back up and I didn't have it perfect, but I was willing to step and have faith that it would get better, that I just kept stepping. And when I didn't know, I kept stepping and stepping and stepping. And eventually it led to these incredible spots. And here's the risk that people run. What if in the middle of what you're facing lies one of the greatest opportunities that you've ever had? And because you lay down and you're not willing to do something about it, you miss one of the greatest opportunities you could have to grow into the person you're meant to be and to inspire people around you or to create your dream business. And I always think of a Winston Churchill quote, which you may have heard before, which is like, everybody is destined for a moment. What's going to be their finest hour. And what a shame it would be if you're not ready when that moment comes to step up and be the parent that you could be, the entrepreneur you wanted to be. And I just think in the middle of it, don't give up. Like you have some things that you can do that are really amazing, but I tell people, you got to fight for it though. I mean, you got to show up and you got to be willing to work habits. It's the craziest thing. And this, like there's certain things that literally will only take you 2 or 3 minutes a day that can transform. And yet people are like, yeah, I don't know. That seems like it's not working after 4 days.
I'm too busy.
Yeah, I'm too busy. But it's like, are you really too busy? Because let me see your phone and I'll see that you're using your phone for 4 or 5 hours a day. How busy are you to wake up in the morning and point your brain to the things you're grateful for and the business or the family you want to build? If it matters, that's why I said at the beginning, you have to decide whether you're willing to scrap for change. If it is, then you start to implement these habits that will change your mind and your life.
So obviously, these things that are 2 or 3 minutes, and we've had the exact same thing. We use a platform with our clients where they're doing daily tracking, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably in the first 3 weeks of us working with a client, it's probably one of the top complaints. I just don't like tracking what my stuff for the day. Mm-hmm. And I'll ask the exact same question. Well, how long is it taking you? Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, how much time did you spend on your phone today? How much time did you spend in all these other areas, right? And when you put it in that contrast, and so certainly it's not necessarily a capacity challenge.
Yeah.
What is keeping people from doing these? And you've got tons of experience. What is keeping people from doing these 2 to 3 minute things that they know is going to have a big, a decent payoff?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of different things going on, but I think one of the biggest things, I think about this a lot, is we've lost the ability to focus. I mean, studies show our attention span is like 7 to 8 seconds. It's like a goldfish. Like, that's not good. I mean, to not be able to focus is not good. And that's one of the biggest things. And so number one is like, if we can't focus, then we can't get what we want. If you can't show up for any amount of time to invest in the things that matter, you can't get them, right? There's a 2-piece, and they're both related to, I believe, technology. The second piece is instant gratification. We want better. Like, we want to be grateful. We want to be happy. We want to be crushing it in our lives, but we want it like tomorrow. We want it like we want Netflix. We want the habit to go and just roll in and be easy and go to the next one. And we don't want to scrap, but like, that's not the way this works. This is not Netflix. This is not Amazon. And I love both of those things. Like, I use Amazon and I love that, but there's been a cost to going, I can order this and have it this afternoon, or I can order it and I can have it in the morning, or I can order groceries and not leave my house. It's convenience. And with products, that's amazing. With habits and goals, it's not.
Right.
Like, if you want it convenient, forget about it. Like, we're not asking for a crazy amount here. We're just saying, hey, for 5 minutes a day, will you just think about what you're grateful for? Will you just meditate for a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get started? They will transform your mind. They'll teach you to focus. They'll teach you to block out distractions. They'll teach you to narrow in, but only if you're willing to show up. And I just think people haven't gotten to the point. What I really focus on at the beginning is saying, we've got to get clear on why do you want this? Why does it matter? And we've got to go to the habits and say, these are the habits. Here's why they're important. We've got to find a way to attach them to what they want in life and give it a shot. But still, there still has to be the ability to follow through. And I think part of it is changing your beliefs and saying, man, I'm a person, I will show up as many times as it takes to be a role model for my kids. And you got to be able to do that.
Yeah, I love that. And we're at Greer Method, we focus a ton on how our beliefs influence our actions. And it is, I mean,
Yes.
if you can jump in, because our beliefs are truly what hijack us, right?
Yep.
And so I want to just pose a theory to you and just get your
Yeah.
thoughts on it. Because what we're talking about is there are people that are going through life and they are asleep. They're
Yeah.
they're just going through the motions. They're, you know, checking the boxes, and they're just totally asleep. So now this happens, and for some it can be a wake up call, right? You lost your job, you know, you were deemed non-essential, what have you. And now we're talking about, we know there's stimulus bailouts, we know that there's changes with unemployment. Do you think that those are actually counterproductive to personal growth and development? Or
I
could they be?
it could be. I mean, I think anytime you're in a situation where all of a sudden you're kind of at a gut check point, right? Where you're
Mhm.
starting to think, okay, what am I going to do with this? And you start to have stuff coming in. I certainly think that that could be that. You know, it allows you to be comfortable for a while longer. So I think that's totally possible. I think in the middle of it, if that's there, I wouldn't certainly wouldn't tell a client to turn down a stimulus check that comes to them. Like,
No,
I'm
for
not going to
sure.
say that. But what I would say is, let's challenge you. Do you want this business?
Yeah.
What if we took part of that stimulus check and we started to invest in ads, or we started to invest in a part of your company? What if we took it and we put it into something
Do
that
good with
might,
it.
yeah, to level up? So I think the main thing is deciding what you want and be willing to take some of that. And I know you have to pay for your stuff, but even when I've struggled, I told my wife this the other day, and you're probably the only other one I've talked to about this, is I said, even in a time like this, when we've had this happen, you still have to be willing to invest to get what you want, right? You want to make money. Sometimes you got to invest money. That's the gut check, right? We're in this challenging time. Will you still find a way to hire a coach or put yourself into a mastermind group that will elevate your mindset and keep you moving? And my philosophy is I've been willing to do that. I still find ways to invest and to make myself better. And I'm trying to find ways to maximize my Facebook ads to reach more people. If you stop in the middle of it and you stay in a spot where you're not looking forward and progressing forward, those things can become the solution, you know, where you can say, okay, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to downsize, I'm going to squeeze back, I'm going to get rid of things. And it's not that you shouldn't be smart, but I think that certainly could become a crutch.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think and you're highlighting the mindset, right? If you're the type
Yeah.
of person who is wants to put in the work and go out and do the work, then when those blessings, those, you know, real
Yeah.
quick blessings come along, like a stimulus or you know, whatever else it is, unemployment, you're going to turn those into good. And so
Yeah.
maybe on the other side, people that are asleep, maybe it's just feeding that instant gratification. Oh, I've gotten myself in this scenario, in this situation, we don't have enough in savings, we're, you know, in a really bad spot financially. Oh, the
Yeah.
government bailed us out. Oh, somebody else bailed us out. And maybe that just reinforces that sense of someone else will take care of it,
Yeah.
versus what I think you're talking about. Like, no, you got to buckle down, get clear on what you want, and be willing to just grind for it and work for it.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny when you said that, like I thought of the other day, they talked about stimulus checks, right? And there was a woman here who we know who went to Best Buy, and there were like big lines at Best Buy. And it was right when the stimulus checks came out. And I'm like, wait a minute, like what? Like they just, and great, go stimulate the economy. But like, here are people, I would imagine some of them who are probably even struggling, who are going to go and spend. And it probably makes sense why. Spending gives you a dopamine hit. It makes you happy in the short term. But like, I'm still waiting for my stimulus check because I'm going to invest that in ads, man. I'm going to try to reach new people. Like you know, and so I'm going to take and reinvest it. But yeah, you want to be careful with that. I think you want to take a look at this and say, how can I take this situation and turn it into something not that's even equal or just close to below? How in the next 6 to 12 months can you turn it into something better than you've ever had?
Yeah.
And I think some people will challenge themselves in that way, and they'll step up and establish the habits, and they'll move. And a year from now, they'll look back and they'll go, that same spot that other people are looking at and going, that wrecked me. They're going to go, that was the spot that catapulted me. And one more thing I'll say about this. I was reading a book the other day. I think it was a book by Ryan Holiday, and it talked about how the half of the Fortune 500 companies that exist today, Costco even, who's thriving in this environment, started during a recession or a bear market. They started when it was really down. They found opportunity and they delivered and they delivered. And now here they are, some of them thriving in the middle of all this. So I just think the point is to look at it. Somebody's going to thrive in this environment. Somebody is going to thrive in this environment. Why not you? Why not make it you in this environment?
Yeah, I love that. I think you're dead on. It seems like I think the one of the top things that we're talking about with our clients is this is the time to not lose yourself. I mean, granted, it's a strain. It's a difficult time for a lot of people. I've got one client with 4 businesses, and she's in California, in Paradise Valley, where they're just coming off of all these fires last year, where she's been rebounding for the last 9-12 months. And then this hits, right? And so it's just a whole, there's always going to be things like this, but if we don't, to your point, and really to kind of where we start, if we don't focus on the things that really truly encourage us to thrive and allow us to thrive, and man, when the new norm does happen, we are going to be in a much worse spot than when we were starting out. We're going to be less healthy. We're going to have worse relationships. We're going to be, in a worse financial scenario. We're just going to be worse. And I do think there's an opportunity for us to come out better in those areas that truly are, really necessary to thrive, to feel like we're thriving.
Yeah. And I think for people too, it's like, this doesn't have to be just business, right? Like in our household, what we immediately look for is like, would we choose for our kids to be home for 5 months at a time? Probably not. We would have chosen for them to be at school, which would have been good. But like we immediately went to like, what can we make of this? And now our son Carter, who's 8, has been working out for 30 to 40 minutes, doing HIIT workouts and stuff with us every single morning. They're working their journals. I told people this, I'm not proud of this, but like they've learned to play on their own outside for like an hour, 2 hours at a time. Things that we did as kids just naturally. They don't have that. They've not been on iPads. They're outside playing and doing their things. And so it hasn't been perfect. Our kids still
I'm proud of you for that.
No, you know what I mean?
The
kids still bicker, but like we've started to carve out little habits that will, on the back end of this, will be amazing for them. Like if our kids, I think this is the moment where my son starts to work out. And the way we got him going is like, he wants to climb Mount Adams. It's a 12,000 foot mountain here in Washington. I said, Carter, man, you got to find a way to start getting into shape or that thing will swallow you up. You got to be ready, because he loves climbing mountains. And so he's like, well, what could I do? I'm like, what do you think? And he's like, well, I could work out with you. I'm like, cool, let's do it. And he's probably 3 or 4 weeks in, every single day, grinding it out in the morning. So I just think as a family, even you can find ways to make more moments and to make it something really valuable, but you can't if you're sitting every single day and you're going, this stinks. I need a drink. Man, I sure need to get away from this. This sure is a pain in the butt. That is only going to lead you to being frustrated, upset, and allowing your kids to play video games for 12 hours a day, which is going to lead them to a boatload of pain down the road and you pain down the road. You've got to grab in the middle of it and look not only for the opportunity, but step in the middle of it and establish habits that are hard now that will pay off later. And that's the one thing I want to point out right now is like, listen, you can either choose right now to invest in habits that are hard that will make your life easier down the road and better down the road, or you can not pay that cost or deal with the pain and the hard down the road. It's one of the two. So I just assume, and I teach my clients, let's choose the route that's going to be, you're going to have difficult habits, but man, they're going to free up your mind and everything else up down the road.
Huge, huge.
Yeah.
I love it. I know you're super passionate about the whole parenting space as well. I've got a slew of kids, so I've got to be passionate about it. So we'll have to have you on again, and we'll definitely get into that. It made me think of Clayton Christensen, who is a Harvard professor, just passed away a couple of months ago. He wrote a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? And he talks about the challenge of all these parents who are outsourcing parenting. All of the different extracurricular. And so it just, as you were talking, made me think of, man, this environment really is like pulling some of that back in. And I think it was the New York Times. They just posted an article that said, virtually educating our kids is breaking our parents. And it's like, we're now in this scenario where we're not outsourcing kids anymore or parenting anymore. We've got to, in many cases, learn how to do it ourselves, which is sad, but an opportunity, huge opportunity to say, okay, what do we want our family to look like without all of this distraction?
Yeah.
Coyte, you're awesome, man. Any last final thoughts you want to give to our listeners before we let you go? We will definitely have you on again because I feel like we just scratched the surface and we could probably
Yeah.
go on for another hour and a half. What do you got for us?
I
Last
mean,
final thoughts?
yeah, I just think the biggest thing is man, if you want to change your life, invest in yourself. Give yourself time. Like so many people, and I think especially I think of moms or leaders, like they're always pouring into others, and I think that's amazing. Like I want to do that, you want to do that, but if you don't pour into you, you end up empty. You end up frustrated. And so one of the best things you can do is to carve out a pocket. I call it sacred space. Carve out a pocket to spend time investing in yourself, getting your mind in the right place, getting your focus in the right place. So when you show up, you could show up. It's one of the coolest feelings when, even when you still make mistakes, you start to show up and you do the things like jumping on the trampoline with the kids when you don't feel like it. You make those moments. And here's the thing, little things like that string together. And that's what turn into the bigger things. And so string together the little things and trust that that's going to add up to something really special down the road.
Love that. Love that. And you don't necessarily have to hire a coach, but I promise
Yeah.
it will be faster if you've got
Yes.
an extra set of eyes on your progress, on your goals. And especially right now, stripping away the emotion of this climate is probably what we do a majority of the time right now.
Yeah.
So that we can refocus people on what's most important, what they're trying to accomplish, so that we can be productive and efficient and effective. And so I think you're totally right. And you may not be at a point where you need a coach, but or you can pay for a coach, but think about what you can do. Start those things, waking up early, having your morning routine, and as you see momentum, bring in the reinforcements, like start to take those steps and invest. Coyte, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, the one cool thing about a name like Coyte Cooper is I'm the only one on the planet.
Yeah.
So my name, CoyteCooper. You can find my website is that name. You can find me on social media the same. And the last thing I would say is if you like this stuff, if you just go to flipthescripthabits.com, you can get my new book. You can get it in audiobook format. You can just download that thing and listen to it and use that thing to help you out too.
So awesome. Coyte, thanks for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. We appreciate having you. We'll definitely have you back.
Thanks,
a lot,
man. I really appreciate it.